Well, that was a little bit not as good as it seemed. Welcome into the Third Line Jawn Flyers postgame show. I'm your host James Scorza with you, and with me, as always, is a companion and brother from another of mine, Joey Marks from the Pass and F Sports Show. Joey, what's going on, my brother?
Well, that was disappointing.
Very disappointing, yes. Yeah, very disappointing indeed as the Flyers lose tonight 3-1 over the New York Islanders and lose the second game of it. Like basically only scoring one goal out of it and not basically getting the 2 points out of it like it was last night and the first period that came and went. But let's get into this very game that happened here, Joe. Obviously, the first period looked like it was one of those games that I actually said it was a very physical first period for the guys in orange and black. But more importantly than anything like that, I mean, the big story in that first period was just that it was like back and forth, like helter skelter. But it looked like the Flyers just never really got it going again.
Yeah, it was definitely a physical matchup in the first period. I honestly thought that in the beginning of the first period, with the physicality, the Flyers could match it. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the Anaheim Ducks game,
Hmm.
and how the Flyers could kind of match that physicality and kind of get. I feel like chippy games should favor the Flyers in any situation, home or away.
Hmm.
And when that started to get a little chippy, it started to kind of to me, it started to favor the Flyers. And, I thought that they could carry that on. I think because it's the second game of a back to back,
Right.
I honestly think, it took a toll on them.
Yeah, look like
The
the
first
road trip
period,
too. The road trip too looked like it took a toll on them too in that second, like the second game of a back to back. But go ahead, Joe.
yeah, like it felt like that physicality, like they were able to kind of meter the angst both in the first and second period, but then midway through the second period just felt like, they started to kind of lose traction on that physicality, and they kind of just started to bend to the Islanders' will.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it was just one of those games that I wish that it could have gone better, obviously, than it was last night. You think about that circumstance that happened was it kind of felt like the portion of the game was more like it was like a second, like I mentioned, like it was the second game of a back to back, and they also got shunned down last night by the Rangers, and it was like really hard to put into words how bad they looked tonight. But it kind of looked like the same thing too. But before the wheels fell off, though, the Flyers got off to a real good start here to begin the night, as it was Tyson Forster lighting the lamp on a little bit of a twisted wrister to give the Flyers an 0-1 nothing lead, and it kind of felt like right then and there that could have easily gave them momentum. But what did you see that was really the most intriguing thing in that first?
Yeah, with Tyson Forrester, it's good to see him kind of once again. It's that line, that Forrester Cates line,
Right.
Brink line. Like I just feel like that line, for whatever reason, has got a lot of chemistry, and usually Torts would want to kind of move people around to be surrounded with Tippett and Mitchkov, but like no, they want, Torts thinks, ride the hot hand, and Forrester, even though he just, tonight broke a 9-game scoreless streak. um the idea that this line has been so cohesive for the Flyers throughout the season. And I'll give you a couple little stats to kind of think about, especially with the second of the back to back for the Flyers. They're After tonight, they are 1-7-1
Ooh.
in second games of the back to backs this season, which is the worst in the NHL. Their goals against for that second game in the back to back is over two. And so, you got to keep in mind, like, if you're going to drop the second game, you need to put more priority and emphasis on the first game. But regardless, you got to treat every game as though it matters. And against the Metropolitan Division,
Mhm.
especially with the Islanders aren't world beaters.
Mhm.
Their power play and penalty kill are both last in the league. So they're not world beaters. They're the fourth oldest team in the NHL. James, this team should not have beaten the Flyers tonight. Now,
No.
regardless of that, the Islanders are in the mix in that little log jam for that last wild card spot in the East. So, the Flyers are in the mix, the Rangers, the Islanders, a whole I think they said about 8 to 9 different teams are just vying for 1 or 2 spots.
Mhm.
And these games matter because they're the difference between whether you get that spot or not.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I was really put off by tonight was that, like, you brought up that point about the 1-7 and what was it, 1-7-1 you said? That they
Yeah, after tonight, coming into tonight, they were 1-6-1. After tonight, they're 1-7-1 on the
man, Jesus.
second game of a back to back.
Yeah, I mean, I would have thought, like, that usually because I did the pregame show earlier on over at Hardcore Sports Network, and I was thinking, "Okay, maybe, like, the back-to-backs are not, like, as bad as it seems," but that's not something to be looking, like, in a positive direction, especially if you're going closer and closer to right after the All-Star break and also whatever it's called, the Four Nations face-off, and right
Right.
after that, and then, like, getting ready for crunch time. I mean, this is like I mean, like you said, this Islanders team, I mean, one of the oldest teams in the league and basically look like they were just, like, one of the top teams in this like, if they were not one of the top teams, but it just looked like tonight, it just
They
didn't look like they really didn't get it going.
and prior to this, they just lost their one of their bigger better defensemen. So like
Right.
this is a team that that's reeling. And JJ said it best is that the idea that you can't take 2 points away from these teams, that's going to make you and your team down the stretch feel more confident because there may not be as many games against the Metro Division or these teams down the home stretch of the season. So you
Mhm.
need to take advantage when you have this stretch of, facing uh, 4 or 5 teams from the Metro Division within an 8 to 9 game span. I mean, that's something you have to kind of take advantage of. Now look,
Mhm.
they they fell to the Rangers, okay, they had a 3-game win streak, and then they dropped 2, okay. So you gotta turn it around, and they're gonna have to do some soul searching in order to do that, and this young team is gonna have to grow up very fast. There's some there's some critiques, there's some, we'll get to it towards the end of the show.
Yeah.
There's some critiques in my mind that go along with my grade for this game. There are some critiques about this team that need to happen in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, and also critiques as well as I brought up on the topic sheet here is that the late first period woes continue to linger into the first period. Obviously, it happened last night. The Flyers had an early 1-0 lead, and it transpired after that. Obviously, the Rangers scored 6 straight after that, but it's the same kind of philosophy tonight that the Flyers early on had a good start to the game, had a physical style of play, and unfortunately, Forster made it 1-0. But the difference was the Islanders scored 2 goals in a matter of a minute. Can't can't happen, Joe. Can't happen.
Can't happen towards the end, towards the last 4 minutes of a period.
Correct.
Like you have to close out the period strong. And if you jump on a team 1-0, and I said this in other post game shows with you, it's one thing to have a 1 goal lead. You can't rest on that. You gotta if you know you can jump on this team, then you should. And unfortunately tonight, the Islanders were that, hunter.
Hmm.
They were the team that said, okay, they got the first goal and they saw it as an opportunity to jump on them for a second goal within a minute. And that should say everything you need to say for the Flyers momentum. And they have to start clustering some of these goals together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the one thing I took out of this game tonight too was that usually I don't say very much about how bad the first periods have been, but it feels like it's kind of been a trend as of lately with this team because you think about it. I mean, I mean, the Flyers early on in the season, they had like really good first periods and were able to hold on to leads, but now it just feels like they just I don't know if they lost a step. I don't know if it's just something that they like missed in their game or they're just like after a bat to bat, they're like not mentally, but physically exhausted and just want to go back and sleep in their own beds. But I don't know, Joe. It was just not a good performance tonight.
Well, James, you're absolutely right, and I'm not just going to even just say it. You're right on the sense of late in games, but I'll take it one step further. Late in periods, whether it's the first, second, or third, it just
Hmm.
seems like under 4 minutes, like the Flyers take the foot off the gas and they're ready to be in the locker room.
Right.
And they have to understand playing 20 minutes within that period has to be a priority. And I've seen it this season, especially in the third period, which is what you brought up. These guys giving up leads. Uh, if you're gonna
Too
have a
many.
1 goal lead, you better hold on to it because it's the difference between 1 point and 2 points, and those points down the stretch, especially when things get tight, those 1 or 2 points matter.
Yeah, I like you're right on point, Joe. But the other big story in this game here tonight was Ivan Fedotov, who hasn't played for a while. Obviously, it's been more Alexei Kolosov on that backup spot. Came back and started in goal tonight for the Flyers, but basically did not have a good outing. Gave up 3 unanswered goals, and simply put, that's something that he has to fix in this game if he wants to continue to be on this team.
Yeah, I agree. He looked like an AHL goaltender to me tonight.
That he did.
He looked very lost from time to time. Not to say, but and this is where some of my critiques are going to come in.
Sure.
Not all of it was his fault. My feeling is Jamie Drysdale has to pick up his defensive game. Two of those goals that Fitotov let off were a clear result of Jamie Drysdale's not being able to hold the Islander at bay,
Right.
and that just can't happen. I mean, you are supposed to hold the line as a defenseman, and if you can't do that with consistency, then I'm going to get like John Tortorella. You need to sit. You need to sit down, and I get it. We're shorthanded on the defensive front, but you have a couple guys. DeLorean is
Delorier.
possibly going to be coming back, and there's going to be some beef in that back of that blue line. And for me, I feel like if you have that, you have a better and stronger chance of holding that line, and maybe giving these young goaltenders a chance, in difference to having a 2-on-1. Because there it seemed like there was a lot of times where the Flyers defensive line just did not hold the line, and Fedotov was kind of naked with two guys screaming down the ice at him. Bartzel and
Horvat. Bo
Horvath
Horvat. Yeah.
was a key example of that in the second period. Like that was I'm sorry, in the end of the first period.
I did it first.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that is just can't happen. Just can't happen.
Yeah, my dad Joe scores it, checks it in. It says all 3 goals were obstructed goals. He's got to make those saves. No screens in front of him. Yeah, the other thing too with that too is that I do agree, and I think the other thing too that you say is very a valid point too is because the defense being in front of them. I mean that goal that the Islanders scored to make it a third goal. I mean there was no screen in front of them. It was just like a shot, just like trickled through. I mean I didn't just. I mean, I understand that a goaltender, I get to make sure a defenseman has to do his fair share of like the defense's job is trying to keep the puck away from the goaltender. But at the same time, it's just like one of those things that, I mean, it's just something that in Fedotov's game that has to be critiqued. And like you said, like you said, it was not something that like he played like a minor league goaltender, and that's perfectly said by you.
Yeah, and I mean, like, this is the difference when you have a young goaltenders. You don't have a guy that's out there telling the defense, "Get him out, get him out, get him out." Meaning you got to have those defenders move.
Mhm.
because the offensive players are using sometimes those defenders as a way to block the goalie's vision. Now, if the goalie's vision's blocked, the goalie has to be verbalizing that to his defensive players. Look, as a guy who played juniors, I remember I never played defense, but as a winger, if I drop down in the zone to cover or to play on a penalty kill, and I had to play closer to the goalie would always be verbalizing, "Get over, left, left, get over,"
Right.
because he would want me out of his line of sight, not to play poor defense, but to be out of the way of blocking his line of sight to the puck.
Right.
And so the goaltender has to verbalize that. Yes, the defense has to be aware of it, but they can't look backwards and forwards at the same time. The goalie has to verbalize that and communicate that to his defenseman in front of him.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, you look at this team and defensemen, like basically, if there's like a lot of defensemen I know back in the day could be like stay-at-home defensemen and will make the
Mm.
goaltender even more lethal. But speaking of defensemen that played actually pretty well tonight was Eric Johnson after missing so many games. What was the one thing you looked? What was the one thing you took out of Eric Johnson's game tonight, Joe?
Yeah, he had the assist on the Forrester goal. And he had a lot of good shots. He showed to me toughness. He showed to me no rust. He showed to me that he was eager to play, and that's refreshing. That's one of the difference why I bring up the criticism about Jamie Drysdale, is that if Jamie's worn down, if Jamie is tired or Jamie needs a break about things, okay, give him that, because you saw what happened when you had Eric Johnson put on the ice with fresh legs. You saw someone rejuvenated in
Right.
that defensive line. Sometimes you need that. Sometimes you need to rotate your defensive players in and out from game to game in order to keep fresh legs on that blue line. Look, wingers and centers, they're used to flying around the ice. But defensemen, they're bigger bodies. They're guys that don't normally fly around the ice. They're meant to hold the line, to have a body and a presence that's supposed to, keep that other team off balance. Eric Johnson did a really good job. I was really impressed for a guy who's had such a 66 game layoff, that's had that long of a layoff to come back and play that well. That was very impressive. And look, this needs to be a message to everybody that's on that defense. You got to play to a level. And
Yeah.
EJ's missed a lot of games. He came and played at a level. You guys have to match that level. You guys have to match that intensity.
Yeah.
So we'll see if they can.
Yeah, and then like that saying, water finds its level, and Eric Johnson
Mhm.
found the level of that play tonight.
Yep.
All right, let's like I said, the Flyers lose tonight by a final score of 3-1 over the New York Islanders. This is the Third Line Jawn Flyers postgame show. I'm James Scores and Joey Marks with you. So Joe, I know we don't talk very much about grades after a disappointing outing, but this is probably something that we could both agree on, that this was not very a good performance tonight. I guess we have to say it was a little bit of a not an epic fail, but kind of a disappointing outing by the Flyers. Gonna admit.
So I'm going to give it a C minus only for one reason, because I saw some. It's weird because there are certain people I saw good things out of from the Flyers.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are certain people that I saw really bad things.
Mm-hmm.
And, there are a lot of criticisms that I have. One being Travis Konechny. The guy has not been shooting the puck. He
Hmm.
needs to. This is a guy who's a sniper. He's one of your best goal scorers when he puts the puck on net. He's one of your better goal scorers. And honestly, he's been averaging one shot in the last 9 games. That's just not good, dude. You got to start shooting the puck more. We depend on you. And so that's one thing. The other thing, and James, you know me, I call it like I see it.
Yep.
And when you wear that C on that chest, You carry a
You have to
burden.
represent it. You have to
You
represent it.
carry a burden on this team.
Yep.
And I don't discriminate when it comes down to who's wearing it. I take pride in who is wearing it and what kind of job they're doing. And Sean Couturier, he's not doing a good enough job.
Hmm.
He's just not. And you wear that C, you have to keep that C. You don't get that handed to you and you get to hold on to it and grasp it and just say, I can take a step back. Mm-mm. Not in my book, because the last guy that did that, I ran his ass out of town. So I don't think I'm not afraid to do it to another person. Believe me in
Yeah.
this. I don't want to do it to you, Coots, but you got to show up. These
Yep.
guys are not showing up. And I feel like guys like EJ, Mitchkov, they're playing Sanheim, Forrester, Cates. These guys are playing with all this heart. And then there's these other guys that should have the God given talent to put these guys over the top, and they don't. And that's where I give them a C minus for tonight.
Yeah, you're basically right on point. I mean, for me, the grade I'll give is a D because you think about the goaltender that was playing tonight. 3 unanswered goals tonight, 6 unanswered last night by Urson. It just doesn't. I mean, look, I know how much that these two are young. They're trying to get their footing about what they need to do as a goaltender. It's just been a bad outing for the two goaltenders, and you're not wrong about Sean Couturier either. But the one thing I was really annoyed about tonight, it was just that the Islanders, it looked like the Islanders had like Pierre Turgeon or Alexei Yashin or even Jason Blake during their tenure,
Right.
and like how they were back in the day, or even like a Mike Bossy in his prime, but not to that level. But it was just that the Islanders. I mean, you're supposed to be beat teams that are. I mean, I thought okay, the Rangers game last night. The Rangers are a good team, playing good hockey right now. Okay, I understand that. The Islanders, there's no excuse. There's no excuse
Yeah.
for that game tonight. Like
Yeah.
this was supposed to be your get right game.
Yeah, I agree. And despite it, you can make every excuse in the bookies you want.
Absolutely.
It being a second of a back to back and all that. You can make all those excuses all you want, but the difference is the good teams play regardless of it's a back to back or who it may be against. And you go come off of a bad game like that against the Rangers, you should be angry. You should be
Yes.
upset. And I felt like in the first half of that first period, they showed their rage, they showed their anger, they showed that. And then, like I said, it just seemed to meter and dissipate away very quickly throughout the game. And it shouldn't. I mean,
Hmm.
if you're down by 2 goals, for the vast majority of this game, you need to start after losing by 5 the night before. You need to start to have pride about what you want to do and what you want to represent. And that's why I say like those guys that I named, Cates and Mitchkoff and all of
Forster.
them,
Yeah.
Forster, they all are playing with pride, but it's like there's some guys like Tippett and Coots and Konechny that have the God-given talent to put the Flyers over the top skill-wise, and they're just not playing with heart. And that is discouraging. And look, I agree with you with the goaltenders, but we've had this conversation before, and I feel like we're not going to end this conversation by the end of the season. And that is these two goaltenders, these 3 young goaltenders. One's an AHL starter in Fedotov, and the other 2 are potentially just serviceable backup goaltenders. There's no star-stud starter goaltender currently on the Philadelphia Flyers roster. There just isn't.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, if this was like, I mean, even you think about it, I mean, especially like during the times when the Flyers had the goaltender struggles. I mean, this is kind of like a similar circumstance at the same
Mm.
time too. I mean, there's no Brian Boucher, or obviously there's no like Bernie Perron in their prime, obviously coming up here. But that's going to be something that the Flyers are going to have to look for in these next couple months to see what they have with the goaltender matchup too.
Yeah, but if you look at the history with the Flyers, with their backup goaltenders like Michael Leighton,
Right.
Ninemaki, and stuff like that,
Right.
they've had guys that were backups that started their career here as backups
Hmm.
that then eventually became starters, and it's because of the progress, and not like 4, 5, 6 years as a backup. They took 2 or 3 years and they took a big leap forward. Harrison's been here for a little bit, and Kozlov and Fedotov haven't been, but
Right.
regardless of the fact, like, you guys, there's an expectation of what you guys should be and what level you guys should be playing at. And I'm saying it this way, like, the Flyers need, clearly within their rebuild, need more defensive help. They need another sniper, and they need a goaltender. They need a stud goaltender. So I don't know if the Flyers are going to necessarily be buyers come trade deadline. They could be sellers, and maybe Coots is part of that. I don't
Hmm.
know. And maybe, someone like, um, Sandheim or Drysdale could be a selling piece. Who knows? I know
Gusto.
Ristolainen's been on the trade discussion,
Right.
but it's again something we've said. If you trade Ristolainen, are you trading another? Because your depth in your defense is already
Right.
diminished.
Right.
You take him away, you're talking about less defense in front of those already young and vulnerable goaltenders.
I agree. I completely 100% agree. All right, let's go. Before we head out of here tonight, we're going to do a quick round of National Hockey League on this Friday night of NHL. Like I mentioned, the Flyers lose tonight 3-1 over the Islanders. There's a couple games that are going on right now, and there's a couple games that are a final right now. Dallas winning 4-3 over the Vegas Golden Knights. That's a 4-3 final. Utah trailing over Winnipeg, a 4-2 count. Winnipeg continues to win. Lightning winning over in Chicago 4-3. That was all the case tonight on the Friday slate, but for tomorrow, there's a big slate of NHL games going on tomorrow. Starting at 1 o'clock between the Avalanche and the Bruins. Sabres taking on the Oilers. Penguins taking on the Kraken. St. Louis taking on the Dallas Stars. Devils taking on Montreal. That I can bet that's the Hockey Night in Canada case. Kings taking on the Blue Jackets. Toronto taking on Ottawa. Lightning taking on Detroit. Flames taking on Minnesota. Islanders taking on back at it again tomorrow night as they take on the big Carolina. And mind you, Carolina has gotten some big players along the way,
Yeah.
along with got Mikko Rantanen and Taylor Hall in a couple of trades. So I can see they're going to probably be one of the odds-on favorites to win the Stanley Cup now. Capitals taking on the Canucks. That's probably going to be Ovechkin watch once again. Excuse me. Predators taking on the Ducks. And to wrap up the night, it will be the Panthers closing out the Saturday night showcase against San Jose at SAP Center.
Yeah, and look, that trade from Colorado to Carolina, it's gonna put Carolina in a very formidable position leading into the playoffs. Whether they're done or not, that is a big trade for Carolina, especially going forward. It also could be a really good trade for Colorado because moving forward, they keep a young nucleus, bring in some supporting staff, and they're able to continue to strive forward with that young nucleus. The Carolina, though, took a big step forward, like a big leap forward with that trade. So
Yeah.
we'll see how that translates and how fast those guys are on the ice for the Hurricane.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess right now, for sure, whenever the Flyers take on the Hurricanes again, they're going to be like a little bit of a feast or famine against that team from
Yeah.
Carolina. So Brandon Moore is going to have a lot of it's going to be basically like a candy store going to admit too. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up our show for tonight here on the Third Line Jawn Flyers post game show. I want to thank once again my buddy Joey Marks for tuning in once again here tonight. We will be back again tomorrow on over at Hardcore Sports Network for the Pass and Have Sports Show, as we'll have on our good friend Frank Finnegan to talk about this Eagles matchup and so much more. Now, for everyone behind the scenes and for everyone that made it work here, for Joe Marks and for Pat Bernard and for myself, James Scorza here, this has been the Third Line Jawn Flyers post game show. and we will see you next time. Stay warm and go Birds.
Go Birds.